Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's live stream discussion of A Noble Lie. This is a pretty decent documentary. I think presenting a lot of facts, but maybe not in the most coherent manner. There's sort of a bunch of facts here, a bunch of facts here, a bunch of facts here. And as I put together my notes for today's discussion, I was impressed by what they were able to convey. I think they could have done it a little bit better, but nevertheless, it's still very much a documentary worth seeing, particularly if you're interested in what happened at Oklahoma City. I still think all the work that James Corbett did is good, and we've done a film club discussion on that already. But this gives you a look at everything in one video, whereas the James Corbett pieces that we already discussed were cut together from several different projects he did. So what can we talk about here? I mean, there's pretty much every possible problem with this event. We can start with the fact that we we were told that there was a truck bomb, an ammonium nitrate bomb that blew up this building. Problem is that to have that kind of force, you would need a bomb roughly 10 times bigger that would cause columns to collapse. And remember, where have we heard about columns collapsing before? That's right, World Trade Center. So, in order to make these modern buildings fall down by by bombs, you're going to have to collapse their structures. That's how they can fall. You can't just plant a truck bomb outside and have a large force that comes out. Most of that force is going to be dissipated in the air. And even if it were powerful enough, what you're gonna observe in the structure is blowing back into the building. So you're gonna find things blown from that force outwards, from the truck into the building. And what we have instead is just a collapse down and entire columns destroyed. Interestingly enough, the column that is closest to the truck bomb doesn't it is almost untouched. You can see it in the documentary. This is this fits along with the World Trade Center, the second one that was hit falling first. So the physics, the math doesn't line up, and then you have to ask yourself, why was this crime scene demolished? Why, when there were still bodies to be recovered, did they demolish the building, buried the wreckage at under guard, and didn't look any further? So we have a crime scene of a building. It isn't fully investigated. Everything's sort of shut up about it from one side. It's also shut up from the press side. Very early on, there were reports of second bombings. We have numerous witnesses who were in the building who said that they felt an explosion. They were there. It felt like an earthquake within the building itself. There were news reports where people said there was a second explosive. So people were actually involved in the rescue effort. And they said, we were told to move back because a second bomb had been found. So they were trying to rescue people. And they said, no, you can't rescue people right now. We have to get this bomb out, which is a completely reasonable thing to do. Except then they have two trucks pull up and people get out and start loading this truck with documents. And they say these documents are really important. So why? There are still people to be rescued, but the most important thing is that these documents be rescued. What sort of documents were inside the Murrah building? The investigation of Whitewater, drug trafficking, etc., against President Clinton, that was in the Murrah building. One of the ways that we saw that Building 7 helped in that entire crime was being a repository for any planning. If any planning had taken place inside Building 7, and if there were any um, documents in there that were incriminating, it could all be gotten rid of through that demolition. And so we can see here too, kill two birds with one stone. You put forward a terrorist narrative in the United States, and you get rid of a bunch of incriminating evidence on the president. 19 children were killed 19 children in a daycare. And as we say, if you're willing to kill 3,000 Americans inside the World Trade Center, you can certainly kill 19 children. That's no big deal. We also have the story manipulation, the narrative manipulation happening very early on. We have a testimony from a 9/11 responder who said that an agent on the scene told her this place was bombed because of Waco. Who told you that? This has just happened. How could you possibly know that? At best, that was a guess, but it's because they're trying to feed that narrative, just like that famous gentleman. If you've watched the 9/11 footage, where he says, "Oh, I watched this plane hit, and then of course it collapsed due to structural, in the fire." It's like who told you that line to say that? So same thing here. This was bombed because of Waco. Who told you that? Why are you feeding this line? Well, because I have to feed this narrative. Was very edified. Janice Coverdale, who had lost two grandchildren in that daycare, very informed lady and relentless. She moved all her things to Colorado to follow the Terry Nichols trial. She went to the Ryder truck dealership in Kansas to ask about McVeigh. And the person said, well, it was McVeigh and someone else. So over and over and over, we have witnesses saying there was someone else with McVeigh. We know that. We have the fact that the FBI refuses to turn over the footage. They acknowledge that they have the footage, but they say they can't find it, whatever that means. But the footage would reveal that there was a second gentleman. If we found out who that second person was, we could find more things. But in all likelihood, this is a government informant, similar to Strassmeyer, who was the German handler for Timothy McVeigh, working. And there's an entire subplot here towards the end of the documentary about Elohim City and PatCon, and the fact that every time you find a plot against the government, if there's 6 people there, half of them or more are feds. So how many of these are real threats to the government, and how many of these are fake, are put together by the government against itself? We also have covered the murder of Terry Yake, who somehow cut his own neck, put the knife in the car, locked the car, and then walked across the field to kill himself. So Terry Yake did not kill himself. Kenny Trentadue, brother of Jesse Trentadue, who's prominently featured towards the end of the documentary as well. Interrogation gone wrong, mistaken identity, again, somewhat tied together with PatCon, potentially tied together with John Doe number 2 for this event. But in any case, Kenny has been this rod for Jesse to go after the government and push for where are the tapes. And so we know that there are tapes that are being withheld. We know not just from Oklahoma City, but we know from the Pentagon. And then always what's cited is national security reasons. So the question is, what national security are you protecting when you are concealing videotape evidence from an attack that murdered 19 children and attacked a federal building? Because you can then connect the dots. And someone had mentioned in the comment section earlier this week, they said, gosh, is everything suspicious? And I would say, yes, there are a number of things. And it's not just us. There have been false flag attacks in Russia, in Germany, in other places, Japan, potentially. If you need people to do something, you can manufacture them to get them you can manufacture consent to what you want to do by having terrorist attacks scare them, so-called terrorist attacks. And it's clear that Oklahoma City was a preparation for the World Trade Center, the first bombing in the basement, and then the attacks. That we're going to accustom the American people to the fact that there's always going to be threats. Where are those threats coming from? Why are there threats in the first place? We don't ask those questions. There's going to be threats, and then we're going to protect you. We're going to protect you by tapping your phones and sending people to Guantanamo, interrogating them with dogs. That's how we're gonna protect our freedom and our democracy by raping people with dogs. What else? I'm just looking at all these notes. There's so many things to talk about. McVeigh waived all appeals. We talked about this in our previous Oklahoma City bombing live stream, that he insisted on not having an autopsy on his body. Why is that? Um, the the lead investigator for Channel 4 in Oklahoma City, when the channel was acquired, later on the footage disappeared. She was fired. Weird foreknowledge. We have the governor of Oklahoma's brother writing a novel about a bombing in Oklahoma City, and one of the characters in the novel is Thomas McVeigh. Obviously, Timothy McVeigh is the name, but I mean, at some point you have to say coincidence. I mean, please. There's a bombing in Oklahoma City. You're the brother of the governor, and one of your characters has the last name McVeigh. What are you expecting us to believe? Numerous witnesses say there was a bomb squad vehicle parked across the street before the bombing, and the ATF says that person was doing errands. Could you imagine doing errands, routine work in your bomb squad vehicle? Can you imagine the the panic that would set in when the bomb squad vehicle pulls up? So I'm just picking up my dry cleaning. So there are so many problems with this, and I think what I'm surprised about is that I did not look into this sooner. I think I knew that there were problems with Oklahoma City some years ago, but in the sense of what do you have time to go after? What can you spend your time investigating? At the time, Oklahoma City wasn't. But looking at what has happened with the Palestinians has opened up a number of doors for me into looking into things that I had not looked into more deeply. Same thing with 9/11. I had a lot of knowledge about 9/11 for some years. I've known about the realities behind 9/11 since about 2006. But going further, asking questions about certain people who like to dance, then you start digging into further things about that. So looking at the question of Palestine has opened up a lot of other things to look at because it all relates to government control, foreknowledge, who really benefits, etc. So with that, I will ask if there are any questions, some nice comments in the comment section. If there are any questions, we can talk about it a little bit more. Otherwise, I will end the live stream early and get ready. I'm doing a live stream over at Palestine Bookshelf in about 15 minutes. We're going to be talking about a very short film called My Neighborhood. Beautiful little documentary. I'm looking forward to talking about involving the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in East Jerusalem by settlers. All right. Well, if you haven't had a chance to watch this documentary, it's linked in the description of this video. I really encourage you to take a look at it. As I say, I think it's got a lot of information. It could have been done in a better, more coherent manner, but perhaps I think the documentarians were just so interested in putting a lot of facts in front of us that they wanted to lay it out the way they did because in a sense you almost feel overwhelmed by facts at a certain point. um, Super chat from $20. Thank you very much. I appreciate the support, and we'll continue to look at documentaries like this. It's clear from watching the views in the channel that I I think people might see, I have very serious books that I read, and then every now and then I'll read something that's, a novel or not so serious. And that's less necessarily about my viewers, because I've come to realize my viewers are not so interested in those things, but it's more for me in the sense that you can only read difficult stuff and watch difficult stuff for a certain amount of time before you have to take a break, right? So my review this week was on a book about F1 because the F1 season starts next week. And sometimes you have to take a break from the depressing, difficult, the government is lying to you and murdering people stories, and look at something less consequential. I'm not saying that that's going to be something I do very often, but I hear you based on the views. I understand that it's not that interesting to you, but I'm not necessarily doing the reviews and the film club selections based on whether people will be interested. It's really whether I'm interested. And I hope over time to build an audience that is interested in the same things. And I'm starting to see where that audience is interested, what direction of travel that audience is interested in, and I'm trying to shape that while also being true to myself. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm reviewing books or films because my audience wants to and I'm not interested. So far there's been a lot of overlap, and in fact the documentary that we're going to talk about on Palestine Bookshelf was suggested by um, a subscriber of the channel. So excited to, as I say, excited to talk about that. But if there's not any more comments or questions on A Noble Lie, I will let you all go. Just encourage you to watch the documentary and um, and see for yourself how many holes are in the official story of Oklahoma City, a very much forgotten terrorist event on U.S. soil. The trick being that the terrorists were ourselves. Depressing things do have an emotional toll on us. In the end, we appreciate all your work, whether it's Palestine or I appreciate that. As I say, I know when I put up a certain video, whether it's going to get a lot of views or not. And there are certain videos in the future, which I know are going to bring in an entirely new group of viewers simply because of the subject matter. Things that you're not supposed to talk about, things that can get you canceled, things that can end my YouTube channel. But it's too late because I already have backups of all the videos on Odyssey and X and on my hard drive. So they could delete the channel, but I'll still have all the videos and you all can find me somewhere else if that happens. I noticed the film club I did on Matt Walsh's What is a Woman, one of the clips from there got limited monetization this last week because of the mention of Big Pharma, obviously, and the trans agenda. And what was interesting was a number of people, well, not a number of people, um, a couple commenters had tried to relate that, well, because you're for Palestine, you should be for the trans agenda. And I had said, I said to in the comments, and you can see the comments for yourself. I said the main thing about supporting the Palestinians is that's a just cause, and those people need our support. But you can't make assumptions about the people that support Palestine. In fact, what's interesting is all the different types of people that support Palestine. We all come from different perspectives. Obviously, I'm a Christian, and that's an entirely different view from, let's say, the Jewish people who support Palestinians, or other Muslims who support Palestinians. That we all have different views about things, so you can't make one assumption based on another. And I suppose people are starting to pick up the more reviews and film clubs I do that I have a particular worldview, and that's being expressed more and more. And if people don't like it, that's fine. The only things that I really delete are really hateful, profane things in terms of the comments. But otherwise, if you disagree, that's fine. As I say, thanks for the feedback and thanks for the support. So about 10 minutes from now, if you're over at Palestine Bookshelf, we'll be discussing about a 25-minute short documentary. And if you haven't had a chance to watch it, you could go watch there's a link to it in the description. You can watch the first 10 minutes and before that stream begins and give yourself a little bit more introduction into that discussion. Thank you all for stopping by and listening to this my talk about this documentary. As I say, I encourage you to go check it out yourself and learn more about the Oklahoma City bombing.